Hey everyone, welcome to the Totally Well Show. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. The Totally Well Show is a place where we get curious, ask questions, and explore everything to do with health, wellness, fitness, personal development, helping people, and all the things it takes to help you live a strong, joyous life. Today's episode is about gut health, and I have two experts, father and son team, Mahmoud and Afif Ghannoum. Dr. Ghannoum is a professor at Case Western and has been researching fungi for most of his life, and his son is CEO of Biome Health, which produces actionable steps you can take once you understand from their testing what is in your gut, and also provide some quality probiotics, prebiotics, and other supplements that you can take to supplement a healthy lifestyle. And that is really the key message and takeaway that I got from Dr. Ghannoum and Afif, his son, is that really the foundation has to do with what we eat, when we eat, how we eat, our stress management, our sleep, our sense of well-being. So they really have a wonderful holistic approach, and explain to me why we can help with weight loss, and we can help with autoimmune conditions and digestive issues, and go beyond some of the barriers that we've run into before by taking a holistic viewpoint. So we're going to talk about bacteria and fungi and biofilm and lifestyle in this episode. Please reach out to me. Let me know if you have questions. And in the show notes, you'll find all the ways to reach Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum and Afif Ghannoum, and their websites and their Instagram handles and all that good stuff. So thanks so much for tuning in to Totally Well. I would love to hear from you. So please DM me, reach out, email me. I love questions. So with that said, on to the show. Enjoy.
First of all, thank you very much for having us on this call. Afif and I were really looking forward to having the podcast with you. You know, the idea of the microbiome, for years now, people were talking about, really, instead of just saying the microbiome, they really are only looking at bacteria. Yeah. Like forgetting the fact that in our body, in our gut, on our skin and mouth and all over the place, we have not only bacteria, but we have fungus as well. Mm-hmm. And one of the best examples is when somebody takes an antibiotic, what happens, you kill the bacteria, both good and bad, and this gives the opportunity for fungi to increase in number. And this, I realized that many years ago, in maybe 1974, when I was started to do my doctorate, okay? Now, then it came, the idea is, okay, we really need to tell people it is not enough to look at bacteria in your gut, but you should look also at fungi. Because if one is affected, let's say we reduce the bacteria, the fungus increase, and if the fungus is high, it tries to keep the bacteria down. So that's where the premise. The first thing we started to do is we looked at HIV-infected patients. And as you know, HIV-infected patients, they have oral candidiasis with this thrush in their mouth. And when we did the first study and we published it in 2014, we showed that there is imbalance, particularly in the fungal community, and that's why they tended to have thrush. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward, I start looking at Crohn's disease. And as you know, people with Crohn's disease, they have inflammatory symptoms, and people were again looking at bacteria. So we did a study in families, members with Crohn's versus those with no Crohn's. They are healthy, brothers or members of the family living in the same place. And we found that there is an imbalance both in bacteria and fungi, where there is an increase in Candida tropicalis, one of the species of Candida, as well as E. coli and Serratia marcescens, which is bacteria. So that's where we started writing about it and saying, this shows we really need to balance both bacteria and fungi. And at that time, maybe Afif can tell you, he said, Dad, we have to do something about it. So Afif, you take it.
Yeah, so basically in 2016, my father does this clinical trial showing that bacteria and fungi are working in the gut. And literally thousands of people reached out and basically said, I never really understood this fungi connection. And how do you recommend really addressing it. And what we saw was that really in the market, everybody was talking about bacteria. No one had really made this connection to creating probiotics and really microbiome tests to really analyze fungi's role in everything. So that's how we actually created our company Biome. And so we designed probiotics that balance both the bacteria and fungi in the gut, as well as a microbiome test that analyzes both the bacteria and fungi in the gut. But from there, it's really taken a life of its own. And we've continued to now develop, processes and therapies around using diet to optimize those things. That's actually how my dad ended up writing his new book, to show people that one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that while your bacterial microbiome can take months to adjust, you can actually adjust the fungal component, the microbiome, in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So by even just optimizing your diet, you can make massive impact. And it's really fascinating. What we've seen is it seems almost daily, if not weekly, there are new studies showing the microbiome's connection to our overall health and wellness. So it's been a fascinating time to sort of be in the mix of it. And the whole time, it's funny, I always say this about Dad. Dad's not some like slick TV doctor. He is an active researcher. He got his latest NIH grant around the metabolome impact in bacteria and fungi. So this is something where, we're still seeing how we can take his ivory tower research and really bring it to, the consumer base.
Mm-hmm. So you brought a test in that you do in the laboratory into a kit that the masses can use.
Right. So what we found was that, even from his Crohn's study, literally I wrote an article in Forbes about this. A woman reached out saying, could you test my sons? They have Crohn's. And my dad wasn't set up to do that. So really what we did was we commercialized his NIH level testing at his lab. And that's not just in processing the kit, but it's in the interpretation of the results. Because, if you take an ancestry test and says you're 80% Irish, that's kind of the utility of that. With your microbiome, people don't really care at the end of the day what's in their gut. They want to understand how they can start feeling better, right? So the way we actually optimize the output was in a report that tells them exactly how to optimize their diet, some supplements they should consider, as well as lifestyle changes, because we've actually seen where there are bodybuilders. We oddly enough have a lot of people that are bodybuilders, like extreme fitness people, UFC fighters. They have a lot of digestive issues because of the intense exercise stress they put on their bodies. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it's not necessarily just diet. It's some of these lifestyle things, or we'll see people that eat very well, they exercise, but they're chronically stressed, and they'll have issues. So one of the things we really advocate is that microbiome, because it's multifactorial, you really have to take a holistic approach to optimizing your gut health through your diet, through obviously lifestyle, through even things like alcohol that can have a disparate impact on the microbiota. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing which you asked about is biofilm, which I like to talk a little bit about.
Yeah.
So when we found that there is Candida, E. coli, and Serratia, the two bacteria and the fungus, are increased in Crohn's disease patients, we did a study, because when you think about it, in our gut, even in our teeth, the plaque is a biofilm. So these organisms, they come together, every morning we have to brush our teeth to get rid of them. So the same thing happens in the gut, where these pathogenic organisms, or those that cause diseases, they come together and they start to work to try to basically, the first thing they do is they are protected under the umbrella of the biofilm. Just to make it simpler, it's like having a jello, and inside this jello you have all these M&Ms or raisins, for example. The raisins are the organisms, and the jello is what we call the matrix, or the umbrella, which protect these organisms. So it becomes very difficult to get rid of them using antibiotics or antifungals, for that matter. At the same time, when they are there, they start to affect each other, and they start to become more virulent. For example, Candida start to form these thread-like or filaments, which can start causing damage to our epithelial cell lining in the gut. And that's where you start to see inflammation and this sort of thing. And with that in mind, when I designed the the diet, which Afif mentioned, which is now, I'm glad to say, it's out in Total Gut Balance book. And we aim to do the following. Number one, we aim to limit the number of fungus, because that is quite, especially Candida, okay? And we give them what sort of diet will help in that. We also want to encourage the good bacteria in our gut, because these are good guys. It's like the policeman that keeps fungus under control. So we need to give, for example, fibers, which they love these organisms, and they start to increase. At the same time, we need to limit those organisms that are pro-inflammatory. In other words, they cause inflammation. So, and then, of course, with our observation with biofilm, we needed to have food such as apple cider vinegar, garlic, and others that can break the biofilm. And also in our probiotic, we put an enzyme amylase, which also can break these biofilms. So you get rid of this biofilm, have some good vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, which have, as you know, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. So when you put it all together, you are gonna have really getting rid of the bad guys, encouraging the good guys, dissolving the pathogenic biofilm, and feel well, both in the gut as well as, we hope, overall wellness.
So without having to take a medication, it's completely different thinking than what I grew up with, which was more a pill for an ill. Take this and get rid of this. It's really more getting your body healthier to do its job.
Well,
exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll give you a great example that we really illustrates your point. So one of the things that we see a lot of people having to deal with is acid reflux. And one of the common ways they deal with it is to take an antacid. The problem is that's just completely band-aiding the actual problem. They're not actually getting the root of it, which is a lot of times with acid issues is their diet, or when they're eating and that type of thing, right? Like for me, like clockwork, if I ate within an hour of me going to bed, I will have acid reflux, right? So I just know I can't do that, right? And the problem is when you use antacids, people think of acid production as a negative. And it really isn't. It's actually a critical function that protects your body. One of the things that your body will do is it will kill pathogenic organisms as they go into your GI because of the acid. So that's why with probiotics, one of the things you have to look for with a good probiotic is that it will survive that journey down, but you don't want to necessarily mess with your body's acid production because that's got a very positive impact. The problem is because of a lot of the types of food that people are eating, the way they have their diet, it causes so much acid production that they try to band-aid it with a medication. Really, what they need to be doing is through a lot of times diet, and they're really, the way they're taking a holistic approach is address it that way, right? So I use acid and antacid as an example because we see that a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, listen, you could probably adjust this through what you're doing proactively on the diet side.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of now what the advancement we are seeing now with the microbiome and even other sort of diseases is that we are starting to think about prevention. Not everything we should take a pill, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
And that's really fantastic because I was talking to some friends of mine who from Boston, they work in this area, and they say, Mahmoud, if people really realize 30% of the discoveries that we are seeing with the microbiome and mycobiome, then we are going to change the way we practice medicine. We are going to make people much healthier by doing preventative measures without taking a pill for everything. And that's really was our hope.
Mm-hmm. Well, for sure. I've been thinking like this for a long time, and I've seen it in my own life that when I got sick, nobody talked to me about diet, what I was eating, whether it was even processed or whole food. Very, very general. It was much more about what chemo I was getting or surgery I was getting. If I needed a psychiatrist because I was losing my mind. I was like, well, you just told me I have breast cancer and I'm going to die. What do you expect me to do? But yeah, I really just started to listen to my body and say, what makes sense? And first of all, this processed food hasn't been around that long. And I, was really brainwashed or marketed to to think it was okay.
Yeah. No, we are on the same page. I'm
Yeah.
really glad. I'm really glad about this.
And I know from listening to you before that you advocate whole food. And I got the sense that you don't think one diet fits everybody.
Exactly. You know, the important thing in the design of the diet is that it is flexible and customizable, you know, because there are people who are vegetarians, vegans, you know, whatever. What's important is try to select the right food and try to do it in the right mix. That's why we try to provide in the book like recipes so that people can modify according to their needs. And there are some things, you know, you shouldn't take. You have the ability to do so because you have a big choice of different ingredients. As long as you are able to know how to put it together and select the right type of food. Like for example, carbohydrates, everybody say no carb. I tell you, carbs are not bad, provided you select the right carb, you know. Like for example, there are two different types, like in general, of carb. They have digestible, which means when we eat them, like simple sugars, when we eat them, they are broken down in our intestine. And that's where most of people have refined sugars and a lot of food that contains all these simple sugar that's easily broken, and that's not good. What's good about you need the indigestible carb. This, for example, you find in bananas, in oats, you know, especially unripened bananas, sometimes in sweet potatoes, you know. Why is this important? Because they are not broken in our intestine. They go down to our gut, lower the colon, where there are a lot of microbes there. That's where the microbiome lives. And these organisms, especially the beneficial one, can break them down and start producing small molecules. We call them metabolites, which are anti-inflammatory, and they also, once they overgrow, the beneficial organisms, when they overgrow, guess what happens? They keep the bad ones down, under control, as I mentioned before. So that's why you are absolutely right. It's very important to be customizable. You know, you need to also enjoy what you are eating. You cannot just abandon this and abandon that. It's good to eat proteins, but try to have lean proteins from plants, from fish. So you see what I mean? This is really the concept.
Yeah, you mentioned and the other podcast I listened to you on about meats in particular, and I think you said it was the fats in the meats that cause the problem.
Yes, high fat red meat, you know, especially because they have saturated fatty acids. What we would like to have is unsaturated mono and polyunsaturated fats, because these are good, you know, and this you can find them a lot in fish, for example. You can find them in plants as well. So absolutely, you really need to select the right type of protein. And in this regard, and fats, there was a study where they looked at fats and proteins, especially coming from plants, and compared it to the red meat ones, and they found that the red meat ones causes imbalance, whereas the good stuff from plants, fish, really are very, very helpful to our body, and they really help balancing the microbiome, unlike the red meat ones.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that. You had also, I think, mentioned something about the different kinds of oils that we use, like olive oil versus other kinds of oils.
I think olive oil, and as you know, this is very famous. I come from Lebanon, like similar to Italy, where we have a lot of olive trees and olive oil, and they are, especially the extra virgin olive oil, are fantastic because, as we mentioned, they have the unsaturated fatty acids. I think this is very important. Some coconut oil is good as well, and you know, some other essential oils are very, very helpful. But I really put at the top of the tree is the olive oil.
So we want to avoid the seed oils. That can be...
Yes, some of them, especially like, you know, corn oil and whatever, not as good as the olive oil.